Jenny, how's everything going? Nova's voice was soft, filled with concern. We're on our way to the hospital, Jenny replied, her voice trembling. The doctor said the baby needs surgery. Within 2 days. It can't wait. Nova's heart sank. Oh no. I'm so sorry. What about your mother? Did the doctors say anything about her? Jenny let out a shaky breath. No, not yet. Mom has an appointment at hospital tomorrow. Don't worry, okay? Nova said gently. Do you need any of us to go with her? She shouldn't have to go alone. It's all right, Jenny whispered. Nova, I'll call you once we reach. Okay, Nova replied softly. We are here, if you need anything. The call ended. Nova stared at the screen for a moment, her chest heavy. What did she say? Angel asked, noticing her expression. Is everything okay? Nova blinked back the worry in her eyes. The baby needs urgent surgery, and her mom's not doing great either. Poor girl, Angel murmured, watching a group of students laughing near the canteen, their world untouched by grief. She lived her life as best as she could, only had to bear those snake-like relatives. But now, it feels like the whole world is against her. Did you tell her what we were told? Angel asked hesitantly. Nova shook her head. No, not right now. Jenny's gaze fell on the tiny baby, nestled against her sister's chest, breathing softly. Her heart ached. She closed her eyes and leaned back in the ambulance seat. The siren wailed in the distance, but all she could hear was the sound of her own hope slipping away. My life was never supposed to be like this. I used to believe things would turn out okay. Maybe not perfect, but at least safe, normal. But everything changed the day my father died in that accident. That's when the ground beneath our feet gave way. His family didn't even wait for the dust to settle. They threw us out of the house, saying we had no right to stay. As if our pain didn't matter. As if we were just strangers. So we left. With nothing. From then on, my mother carried the weight of our world alone. She worked 4, sometimes 5 jobs, just to keep us afloat. I still don't know how she did it. But she never let us go to sleep hungry. Somehow, she managed to give me and Anna a life that still had hope in it. Later, Anna married Matthew, her longtime boyfriend, a good man, humble, working as a mechanic. They had a baby last year, little Adam. He was a light in our dark days until we found out about the hole in his heart. Since then, Anna and Matthew have been drowning, barely surviving while trying to gather money for his surgery. And as if life hadn't already given us enough. A few months ago, my mother was diagnosed with uterine cancer. Some nights, I just sit in silence, wondering how we ended up here. Wondering when life will finally give us a break. The sound of a notification snapped me out of my thoughts. I glanced down and saw Nova's name on the screen. She had sent me some money. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment. The lump in my throat rising before I could stop it. They always knew, even when I didn't say a word. Henry pulled into the car porch of his parents' mansion and turned off the engine. Inside, his grandmother Marie, sitting quietly in the hall, lifted her head at the sound of the car pulling in. When she saw Henry through the window, a small smile touched her lips. Luca, who had been nestled beside her, suddenly wriggled free and ran off, his happy giggles filling the air as he rushed toward the door. Sophie paused at the sound of her grandson's laughter and stepped out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. You came? She said softly. When I heard Luca's laugh, I knew it had to be you. Who else would it be? His parents are always so caught up in their own lives. How could they possibly find time for this little one? Marie murmured, gently brushing her hand over Luca's head. Nancy stepped down the last stair, and her eyes immediately landed on Henry. Well, look at you. He stood there, cradling Luca with an easy tenderness, completely unaware of the way he looked. His white shirt hugged his chest, just enough to make her mouth go dry. Sleeves rolled to his forearms, showing off strong, veined hands that looked like they could do far more than rock a baby to sleep. His jaw strong and cut like stone was dusted with the faintest hint of stubble. And those lips, soft, serious, and way too tempting. She regretted it, every moment, every word that had led to their breakup. But before the ache could settle, her eyes burned with sudden rage as she stepped into the hall, following after her husband, Danny. "Give him back to me," she snapped, reaching out her hand toward Luca. But Henry didn't even glance her way. He shifted Luca slightly in his arms, his gaze fixed calmly on Danny, as if she hadn't said a word. Nancy's jaw clenched. It always got under her skin the way he ignored her, like she no longer mattered. Like she was beneath his attention. "You just got here yesterday," Henry said to Danny with a small smile, gently tickling Luca's belly. "Stay a few more days. We're not done spoiling this little guy just yet." Before Danny could say anything, Nancy's voice cut in sharply. "Don't act like my son is yours. If you want to pamper a child, go have one of your own, not someone else's." She had just tugged at the last thread of Henry's patience. But before she could say another word, Marie's voice rang through the hall. "That's enough, Nancy." Her tone held no room for argument. She stepped forward, eyes locked on her granddaughter-in-law. The room fell silent, thick with tension. "This is not how you speak in this house. Not to him, not in front of your child, and certainly not under this roof." Her words hung in the air, quiet but heavy. Nancy stiffened, her fingers curled in frustration, but said nothing. Henry didn't say a word, but the grip around Luca tightened. He gently handed Luca over to Sophie, then turned and walked to his room, the weight in his chest growing heavier with every step. His teary eyes lingered on Nancy's face, still glowing with smug satisfaction. "I won't let you find happiness, Henry. The day you walked out on me, you chose your own hell, and I'll make damn sure you live in it." Sophie quietly handed Luca to Danny, then turned away and headed to the kitchen, the weight of everything pressing heavy on her heart. Danny shot a glare at Nancy, but she didn't spare him a glance. Without a word, she walked straight out of the house. With a sigh, Danny settled Luca into his car seat and fastened the buckle. He shut the door and slid into the driver's seat, frustration bubbling to the surface. "What was that back there?" he asked, voice laced with anger. "What's wrong with you lately?" Nancy didn't respond. She put in her AirPods and stared out the window, ignoring him completely. Henry was sitting on the balcony, drinking the last sip of his whiskey, eyes seething with anger. Nancy's words echoed in his mind, sharp and bitter, refusing to fade. His grip on the glass tightened until his knuckles turned white. His jaw clenched as he stared into the dark. A hand on his shoulder brought him back to his senses. He glanced up to see his father, David, standing quietly beside him. The quiet understanding in his eyes made it clear his mother had already told him everything that had happened today. David didn't speak right away. He simply stood beside his son, letting the silence settle. "Don't let her words get into your heart, son," he said quietly. "We've long stopped letting her hurt us. If it weren't for Danny, I might have said things I can't take back." Henry didn't respond. "Maybe it's time to think about your own future. I know, you're still holding on to the past, but life doesn't wait for us to get over it. It's time to think about your own family. Not just blood, but people you choose, people you build something real with. You deserve that." Henry looked away, staring out into the dark, as if it held the answers he hadn't dared to ask. "Luca means a lot. I know, but he's not your own, Henry. One day, you'll need someone who's truly yours. Your blood, your future. Don't wait too long to understand that." With that, David gave him a final look and walked away, leaving Henry alone with the weight of his words. Henry's thought drifted in all direction, but something settled firmly in his mind. Sophie was setting the breakfast table when she saw Henry walk out of his room, already dressed up. "You're going somewhere?" she asked softly. "Yeah," Henry replied, adjusting the sleeve of his shirt. Sophie finished arranging the table and gave a small nod. "Eat before you go." Henry's car rolled into the parking lot of KHM Hospital. He handed the keys to the security guard and made his way toward the building. Inside, he headed straight to the gynecology department on the first floor. The nameplate on the door read, "Dr. Sally George, MD Gynecology and Obstetrics." He paused for a second, then knocked lightly before stepping inside. Sally looked up from her desk, her eyes widening in surprise as she saw who had walked in. "Henry," she said, blinking. "Well, this is unexpected." She walked around the desk and gave him a quick, affectionate hug. It's good to see you, sweetheart, she said warmly. You barely called, barely visited. I was starting to think you forgot your aunt entirely. Henry gave a small, guilty smile. It's been a while. I know. Is everything all right? Yeah. I just needed to talk. She pulled back, studying his face with the knowing look only family could give. All right then, she said, motioning to the chair in front of her desk. Sit. Let's talk. Henry hesitated for a moment, then met her eyes. I want a child, he said quietly. A child of my own blood. She stared at him for a moment, then let out a small, surprised laugh. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. Henry's face hardened. This isn't something to laugh off, he said, clearly annoyed. Sally's smile faded instantly, her expression turning serious. She remembered the call with Sophie just the day before how she had quietly mentioned what had happened between Henry and Nancy. Now it all made sense. I am sorry. I just didn't expect to hear it from you, she said quietly. But what do you mean you want a child? Sally asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Are you seeing someone? No, Henry replied calmly. But there are other ways, like surrogacy. Sally leaned back in her chair, arms crossed as she looked at Henry seriously. Henry, surrogacy isn't that simple. I know you're serious about this, but think about it bringing a child into the world with an unknown biological mother. Do you really want your child born to a woman you'll never know? Someone who'll disappear after signing papers? Sally sighed and looked at him with quiet concern. We all want you to have a family, Henry, but not like this. Henry sat in silence, staring at the floor, the weight of everything pressing down on him. What if I never get to be a father? He said quietly, voice barely above a whisper. Sally looked at him for a moment, then leaned forward. Then maybe it's time you got married, Henry. Find someone you like. Or do you want me to help match you with someone? Henry shook his head, his tone sharp. No, not anymore. Not after everything that's happened. I'm done with that. How long do you plan to live like this, Henry? Aloof? Shutting everyone out? At some point, you have to open your heart again. You can't keep hiding behind old wounds. He stayed silent, jaw clenched. She leaned forward slightly, her voice quieter now. You'll have to open your heart again, sooner or later. Or do you really think a woman would marry you just to give you a child? Henry didn't respond right away. He stared at the floor, her last sentence echoing in his head. Will a girl marry me just to give me a child?